What happens when a black woman is simply sitting quietly, and suddenly she's seen as suspicious? What if her husband is a 4-star general? Danielle Prescott had 10 unread emails, 2 missed calls, and just 1 deep breath left. She wasn't overwhelmed or worn out. She just needed a moment that belonged only to her. It was just after 2 p.m. in Carmel, Indiana, a peaceful suburb with manicured lawns, friendly faces, and unspoken boundaries. Danielle sat alone under a sycamore tree in Flowing Well Park, her laptop bag beside her, her tablet still warm from a Zoom meeting she had finished in the car. Dressed in a crisp blouse, navy slacks, low heels, and a ponytail battling morning humidity, she looked calm, capable, composed. She wasn't doing anything unusual, just sitting, thinking, letting the sun filter through the leaves and warm her face. Though she didn't live right there, only about 20 minutes away, Danielle was the executive director of a regional clinic, a married mother of 2, the kind of person who returns shopping carts and answers emails on weekends. She was planning to head home soon, but needed a minute to decompress before the traffic, and maybe to finish the smoothie she'd picked up earlier. No loud music, no phone calls, just a woman on a bench catching her breath. A silver SUV slowly passed by. Danielle glanced up but barely noticed. People come and go in parks all the time. What she didn't see was the driver, a woman in her mid-50s, sitting on the phone at the curb, watching her carefully. "I don't know," the woman muttered. "She's just been sitting there. Looks like she doesn't belong. Could be nothing. But still," she keeps looking around, like she's watching the houses. The 911 dispatcher responded without emotion. "Okay, ma'am, we'll send someone to check it out." Back on the bench, Danielle scrolled through notes for tomorrow's board meeting, making a small correction on her tablet and sighing as she thought about how to secure funding for the new pediatric wing by the end of Q3. That's when a patrol car pulled into the lot, then another. 2 officers stepped out. One adjusted his belt, the other squinted toward her. Danielle looked up, expecting maybe a nod or a friendly wave, but there was none. They walked straight toward her, purposeful, one hand near his holster, the other gripping a radio. "Afternoon, ma'am," the taller officer said. Danielle replied politely but cautiously, "Hi. Is something wrong? Can I ask what you're doing here?" His tone was controlled, not conversational. She frowned slightly and sat up straighter. "I was just finishing some work before heading home." The second officer glanced at her bag. "You live around here?" "About 20 minutes away," she answered. "Is there a problem?" "We got a call about a suspicious person in the area," the taller officer said. "You match the description." Danielle looked around the empty park. Sitting on a bench in broad daylight is suspicious now? "Just doing our job," he said, ignoring her question. "Calm and steady," Danielle said. "I'm not doing anything illegal." The shorter officer gave a tight smile. "Ma'am, do you have identification on you?" She reached slowly toward her bag. "Yes, it's in—" "Stop!" the taller officer snapped. "Keep your hands where we can see them." Danielle froze, hand halfway to her bag, unsure what she'd done wrong. "I was just reaching for my wallet," she said calmly. "Stand up, please," the officer ordered. "Why?" "Stand up." She looked around the quiet, sunny park, still empty, but suddenly everything felt tighter, closer. As she rose, something in the air shifted, not because she was a threat, but because someone had already decided she was one. Danielle stood slowly, hands visible, just as she'd been taught, not from any formal training, but from life. The officer motioned with a flick of his wrist. "Turn around." She blinked. "I haven't done anything wrong." "You're not under arrest," he said, stepping behind her. "You're just being detained while we figure this out." She turned her head, confused. "Figure what out?" No answer. Then the taller officer clicked the cuffs tight around her wrists, one then the other. The cold metal clamped down hard. A group of teens across the park stopped mid-step. A jogger slowed, eyes fixed on the scene. A mother called her child back from the playground, glancing over her shoulder more than once. Danielle's bag, tablet, and half-finished smoothie sat on the bench, untouched, as if she had never been there. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "Officers, this is a mistake. I work in healthcare. I can show you my credentials. There's absolutely no reason for you were acting suspicious." One officer cut her off, voice low but curt. "That's enough," Danielle said firmly, meeting their eyes. "Sitting quietly and minding my own business is suspicious now?" Neither officer replied. The silence spoke volumes. She took a deep breath, lips pressed tight. "I'd like to make a phone call." The shorter officer glanced at his partner, who shrugged. "Go ahead, speaker," he added, tapping his ear like the air had ears too. Danielle nodded and shifted her cuffed hands to reach into her back pocket. With some effort, she pulled out her phone, unlocked it with her voice, and pressed a single contact. It rang once, then a deep, calm voice answered, aged with weight and authority. "Danielle?" Her breath caught slightly. "Hey, I need you to stay calm." A pause. "Where are you?" "Flowing Well Park," she said. "They've detained me. I was just sitting on a bench. Someone called the police. They say I was suspicious." Another pause. "Are you hurt?" "No, just embarrassed." The officer shifted uneasily nearby. "I'm coming," the voice said. "Wait," Danielle said quickly, "before you—" But he was already continuing. "Put me on speaker." Danielle glanced up at the taller officer. "He wants to be on speaker." The officer nodded reluctantly. Danielle pressed the button. "This is General Julius Prescott, United States Army." The voice boomed loud and firm through the phone. "You are currently detaining my wife without cause. I'm on my way now. This call is being recorded. I suggest you notify your supervisor immediately." The two officers froze. The shorter one lowered his radio mic. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. General Prescott continued, "You will not move her. You will not touch her again, and you will not speak to her without me present." Click, the line went dead. Danielle stared at the officers. One cleared his throat. "You should have said who you were married to." She blinked at him like he'd just said something profoundly foolish. And why should that matter? Neither had an answer, because there wasn't one. Minutes crawled by. One officer paced nervously. The other fiddled with his radio, muttering about confirming her ID and trying to de-escalate. The energy had shifted. What began as casual control now smelled like panic. Danielle hadn't raised her voice, but the man on the phone hadn't needed to, and they both knew things were about to get serious. What none of them realized was someone had been recording the entire encounter, and that video would hit the internet well before the general arrived. The silence was heavy, the kind of quiet that feels like it has a pulse, where nothing is spoken, but everything is understood. Danielle stood still, cuffed, wrists aching, but her pride hurt worse. Not because she'd done wrong, but because now everyone thought she had. The jogger had circled back, filming from a distance. The teenagers were closer, whispering among themselves. "What did she even do?" one asked. "They always do this," another muttered. Danielle kept her eyes forward, shoulders squared. The taller cop paced again. The shorter one stepped away, pretending to check his phone. She could see the nervousness now, the kind that creeps in when someone knows they've gone too far and can't undo it. "You can sit if you want," the tall officer said, softer this time. Danielle looked at him like he hadn't just slapped metal cuffs on her wrists 10 minutes ago. "No, thank you." He nodded, but it felt more like surrender than respect. Across the parking lot, a black sedan slowed. Not the general, just another bystander. A woman leaned out the passenger side and snapped a photo. Danielle heard the shutter click. The car drove off without a word. The park had changed. 10 minutes ago, it was a quiet spot for lunch or a stroll. Now it was a story waiting to happen. Whispers, footage online, guesses. A teenager approached cautiously, phone in hand, maybe 17, soft brown curls, hoodie half zipped. Ma'am," she asked, "is it okay if I ask what happened?" Did you? Danielle interrupted gently. I sat on a bench. The girl blinked. That's it? She looked at the officers. Y'all arrested her for sitting. She's not under arrest, the shorter one said quickly. She's being detained. The girl scoffed. Yeah, same difference. To everyone watching, she turned and muttered into her phone camera. Cops just cuffed a woman in Carmel for sitting under a tree. They said someone called her in. She wasn't doing anything. Danielle closed her eyes for a moment, not overwhelmed, but knowing what was coming. Still, the general hadn't arrived. Then came the third squad car, not for her directly, but the watch commander. Lieutenant Harris stepped out, stocky with gray at the temples, gold badge gleaming. He surveyed the scene, walked up to the officers without a smile or greeting. What's going on? The taller officer spoke first. We got a call about a suspicious individual who matched. Lieutenant Harris squinted. What description? A black woman sitting on a bench near the houses looking around. Harris turned toward Danielle and scanned her from head to toe. Professional, polished, standing still with cuffs on her wrists, quiet fire in her eyes. He turned back to the officers. That called for handcuffs? One officer explained. She reached toward her bag. It could have been a weapon. Did she threaten you? No. Did she refuse to give a She tried. Did she raise her voice or curse at you? Physically resist? No, sir. Then take the cuffs off, Harris ordered. The taller officer hesitated, but Harris repeated firmly, take them off. With stiff fingers, the officer moved behind Danielle and unclipped the cuffs. She rotated her wrists, slightly red from the tight metal, but didn't flinch. Miss Prescott, Lieutenant Harris said, now formally, I apologize for the situation. I will be filing an incident report and personally reviewing the call. Danielle looked him in the eye. Lieutenant, my husband is on his way. He's not going to be quiet about this. Harris nodded slowly. I wouldn't expect him to. She folded her arms, standing her ground. I want everything on record. It will be. She didn't have to say more. Just then, a black SUV rolled to the curb. The door opened before it even stopped. Time didn't stop, but it slowed. General Julius Prescott stepped out, 6 feet tall, close-shaved head, sharp jawline, uniform crisp even in the wind. His ribbons lined his chest in 3 neat rows. 4 stars sat on his shoulder. His walk was measured, deliberate, the kind that made people clear the path without a word. The teens across the park fell silent. Phones lowered a few inches. Even the jogger, still pretending to stretch by the trail sign, stood taller. Danielle didn't blink. She had seen that walk hundreds of times, at ceremonies, airports, their home hallway. But now, it wasn't just her husband. It was the full weight of his name. He walked straight to her. No rush, no anger, just focus. Are you okay? His voice low. Yes, Danielle replied. He looked down at her wrists. They cuffed you? She nodded once, for sitting under a tree. He turned and looked Lieutenant Harris in the eye. Who's in charge here? Harris stepped forward. I am, sir. Prescott fixed him with a steady gaze. You have ID on this man? He pointed to the officer who cuffed Danielle. I do, Harris said. Good. I'm going to need everything. Body cam footage, radio logs, call records. I'll be requesting it formally through our JAG liaison. Yes, sir, Harris whispered. The officers who had cuffed Danielle now stood several feet away, eyes downcast, arms crossed like schoolboys in trouble. General Prescott turned back to Danielle. You have your things? She gestured to the bench, tablet, bag. They hadn't touched them. He retrieved them, not because she needed help, but because he wanted to. He handed them over gently, one hand brushing hers. Then he turned back to the officers. My wife is a civilian. She broke no law. She posed no threat. The only thing she did was sit down, in the wrong zip code. Nobody spoke. Let me be clear, Prescott continued, voice cutting the air. You don't get to treat people like this. Not her. Not anyone. If her last name wasn't mine, she'd still be cuffed right now. He let that settle. I've spent 30 years serving a country that still allows this garbage to happen, in the middle of a public park at 2 p.m., he said, eyes locked on the 2 patrolmen. You should be ashamed. Lieutenant Harris cleared his throat. Sir, I assure you this is being taken seriously. Prescott shook his head. Serious is too late. This was basic judgment, basic respect. You either have it or you don't. He turned to Danielle. Ready to go? She nodded. They walked to the SUV in silence. Phone still rolling, eyes wide, no one stopped them. Before he got in the driver's seat, General Prescott paused and looked back one last time. To the woman who called this in, he said, scanning the nearby houses. I hope you enjoyed the show, because now the country is about to see what your fear looks like. He got in, pulled off slowly, almost casually, like he wanted everyone to remember every second. As they drove home, another vehicle arrived, not with sirens, but with a microphone. They weren't asking for statements. They already had the story. The news van didn't need an invitation. It pulled into the lot like it belonged. The reporter stepped out with her cameraman already rolling, catching what little remained. The officers regrouping near their cars, Lieutenant Harris making a call, and bystanders whispering in clusters. But the real story was already out. The teenager who filmed it had posted the video with the caption, "She sat. They cuffed. Then her husband showed up, a 4-star general. This is America." By the time the Prescotts pulled into their driveway, the video had already been viewed over 300,000 times. Danielle sat quietly in the passenger seat, rubbing her wrists, the red marks fading, but not fast enough. Julius glanced at her but said nothing, knowing better than to offer comfort before she was ready. Finally, Danielle spoke. I wasn't scared. I was angry, then embarrassed. But now, she shook her head. Now I'm just tired. He nodded, eyes on the road. You don't have to explain that to me. Danielle pulled out her phone. Dozens of texts, missed calls, group chats blowing up. Her sister had already seen the clip, as had a board member from work. The video was spreading, not because she was important, but because people recognized the scene. The face, the cuffs, the silence, the shrug. They'd seen it too many times before, but this one hit differently. By the 5 p.m. news, it was breaking worldwide. A developing story from Carmel, Indiana. A black woman briefly detained by police officers in what is being called a case of mistaken suspicion. The woman's husband, a high-ranking U.S. Army general, challenged the officer's conduct. The video showed Danielle standing still, the cuffs being placed, the calm in her voice, the crack in the officer's tone when she mentioned her husband. Then the general's arrival, tall, composed, commanding, not yelling, just standing firm. Cut to a legal analyst. People often wonder what would have happened if there wasn't a camera. This time, we saw what happens when there is one. It's not just about race, it's about assumptions, power, and who gets the benefit of the doubt. Within hours, the hashtag #SatW, sitting while black, began trending. Danielle's phone rang. It was her clinic's PR director. I'm so sorry, Danielle. We're behind you. Do you want us to make a statement? Danielle thought about all the women cuffed, questioned, shamed, without husbands in uniform, without an audience, without cameras. She didn't want to be a symbol, but maybe she already was. I'm not sure yet, she said, but if I speak, I won't hold back. The woman on the other end paused, then said softly, We'll be ready. Back in the neighborhood, Lieutenant Harris watched the clip on his phone, jaw tight. He knew this wasn't going away. He also knew the 2 officers under him had crossed a line they couldn't walk back. That evening, he made 2 calls, one to Internal Affairs, the other to his captain. Neither conversation was short. While they handled damage control, Danielle sat at her dining table drafting something she hadn't written in years, a public statement in her own voice, on her own terms. By morning, the video had passed 3.1 million views. It wasn't just the footage, it was the tone, the contrast, the image of a calm, cuffed black woman on a park bench and a 4-star general stepping out of an SUV, not to shout or threaten, but to expose. Major news outlets picked up the story. Black woman detained in park, husband, a U.S. Army general, demands accountability. Wrong zip code, wrong time, viral video sparks outrage in Carmel. General Prescott's calm fury, a lesson in power, race, and public shame. Danielle watched the coverage like someone hearing a familiar story, except this time, it was her name in the headline. Her phone kept buzzing. Advocacy groups, journalists, elected officials reaching out, eager to show support, quietly hoping she'd mention them when the press tour began. For now, she stayed quiet, but the city couldn't. Lieutenant Harris held a noon press conference, face tight, words careful. We acknowledge the incident involving Miss Danielle Prescott and 2 officers from our department. While the officers responded to what they believed was a credible call, the situation was not handled with the discretion and professionalism we expect. We have launched a full internal investigation, and both officers involved have been placed on administrative leave. Reporters pressed him. Was it racial profiling? Would the city apologize? Had General Prescott made demands? Harris deflected. We are reviewing body cam footage and taking appropriate steps. But by then, the public had already decided, and so had General Prescott. At exactly 4 p.m., he held his own press conference, not at a government building, but on his front lawn. No podium, no flags, just him, Danielle at his side, and a wall of cameras. He didn't read from a script, didn't need to. My wife sat on a bench. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't break a single law. She was handcuffed because someone didn't like how she looked in their neighborhood. That's it. He glanced at Danielle. And the only reason she was uncuffed was because of my rank, my title, my uniform. That's not justice. That's politics. The system didn't protect her. I did. And I shouldn't have had to. The reporters nodded, some silent, others watching closely. Let me be clear, he continued. We're not suing for money. We're not asking for quiet apologies behind closed doors. We want real policy change, public accountability, and training that actually works, not just a checkbox on a form. Danielle stepped forward, taking just a single step. I've worked hard my whole life. I pay taxes, raise children, run a healthcare clinic, but when I sat on that bench, none of that mattered to them. I was just a problem. She didn't cry or raise her voice. I don't want this to be about how powerful my husband is. I want it to be about how powerless people feel when this happens to them, without a title, without a camera, without a voice. That night, Danielle's words became the new headline. While news programs debated and tweets flew back and forth, the Carmel police quietly updated their website with a new page, Community Incident Review and Bias Training Initiative. But people weren't impressed. They'd seen that before. What nobody had seen yet was what Danielle had written the night before. By morning, it was the only thing anyone could talk about. At 7:41 a.m., Danielle hit post. No team of editors, no stylists, just her iPhone, her thoughts, and a heart that hadn't stopped racing since the day before. The caption was simple. Here's what I needed to say in my own words. Below it, a 2-minute video. No music, no graphics, just Danielle seated at her kitchen table, sunlight pouring in behind her. She looked straight into the camera. You know what hurts the most? She began. It's not the cuffs. It's not the embarrassment. It's that nobody asked me what I was doing before they judged why I was doing it. Her voice was steady. No anger, just truth. I sat on a bench in a quiet neighborhood. Suddenly, I became someone to fear, not because I did anything, not because I said anything, but because I wasn't supposed to be there. And the person who called? She didn't say a word to me. She just called the police like I was trash to be cleaned up. Danielle paused. Let that sink in. They didn't see a woman. They didn't see a mom or a professional or a wife. They saw a problem. And the minute I opened my mouth to defend myself, I became non-compliant. I became a risk, a box to check to justify how they handled me. Her eyes never wavered. I didn't get dignity until my husband showed up in uniform, until power walked up behind me. But what about the women who don't have that? What about the women who get cuffed, dragged, arrested, humiliated, without a general walking in behind them? She leaned in slightly. I'm not special. I shouldn't have to be treated like a human being. The video ended with 10 seconds of silence, just her face, just her eyes. Then it faded to black. By noon, the clip had passed 5 million views. Comments poured in, not just supporters, but women of all colors and backgrounds sharing stories. Black women, brown women, Asian women, white women. Stories stacked up like bricks in a wall. Stories of being followed, doubted, silenced, pushed aside. Then came a ripple Danielle hadn't expected. An anonymous but verified profile posted a shaky clip of a quiet street, a tree, a bench, and a nervous voice. I think I was the one who called that day. I didn't realize. I swear I didn't mean for it to go like that. I was scared. I didn't even know what I was scared of. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Danielle didn't respond publicly. She didn't have to. The world was already having the conversation. The next day, General Prescott received a formal letter from the city requesting a private meeting with the mayor and police chief. He declined. Instead, he wrote back, "My wife has already said what needed to be said. The question now is whether you're going to listen." Danielle returned to work the following week. She brought cookies for the office, led a strategy meeting, laughed at someone's bad joke. But the people around her looked at her differently now, not with pity, but with recognition. The woman who got handcuffed and stood up anyway. The woman who spoke the quiet truth out loud. The woman who turned a bench into a battleground, without raising her voice. As for the officers, one quietly resigned. The other was reassigned to desk duty pending review. The city promised reform, but the public stayed skeptical. Danielle didn't wait for anyone's approval, because she knew what so many already knew. Respect shouldn't depend on who walks in behind you. It should begin the moment you sit down. We don't always control how we're seen, but we do control how we stand, even when we're sitting. If this story moved you, say something, share it, talk about it. Speak up when it's uncomfortable, because silence is easy, and that's why it's dangerous.